So this is Happy Talk Monday, and I hope it's going to be a good one. I know that our subjects that we're going to touch on today are going to be good, and they're going to touch so many of where you and I are at. In just a minute, I'll be welcoming my co-host today. Dr. Jeff Garner is in San Francisco, and I'm on the other coast in Florida. So Kathy and I came to the beach for a few days, do some resting and writing and check on things. And it's a beautiful day, lots of rain, probably for 3 hours this morning, as much rain as I've ever seen. But our place down here has a metal roof, like a tin roof, and man, it's really good for morning sleeping. When it's dark and cloudy and there's a gentle rain peppering the metal roof, it's really good for sleeping. So if my eyes look a little puffy, I haven't been crying. It's been really good rest. So I hope you're doing good today, and we are. Jeff is joining us now. Hi, Jeff.
Hey, Mike. How you doing?
Well, I'm good. I was just about to tell our friends about our good meeting today with our partners in New York and what's going to be happening with our coaching course, but let's put that on the back burner for just a minute and catch up with you. Tell me what's going on and how you're doing.
Oh, I'm recovering from a difficult day yesterday.
Are you? Difficult day.
The the Super Bowl. It was just really
Oh,
rough on us San Francisco
oh,
people.
oh, how could I forget? So,
Well, thank you for not rubbing it in.
well, no, I wouldn't do that. But, Kathy, she walked by last night. I was watching the game, and she's not a huge football fan. She's not opposed to it, but she didn't sit down long for the game. She likes the backstories and all that, but as she walked by, she said, "So Jeff is probably for San Francisco 49ers, isn't he?" I said, "Yeah, I think so." I think he probably is. Well, the Chiefs have been my default team for several years because I live in Dallas and have to love the Cowboys, but they frustrate me. And every time they drop out, which is always, I go with Kansas City. So I was really happy.
Yeah, yeah.
I was going to say, though, what a great thing that both young, outstanding quarterbacks are also love Jesus, outstanding Christians, and let it be known. And I thought that was really good. I think Patrick Mahomes still cusses a little bit. I'm not sure. I heard him on a hot mic that I don't know he was on. He was kind of firing his team up, using a few choice words. So he's still walking it out. But seriously, he and Brock Purdy have both been outstanding young men and witnesses, and what talent. So that was exciting too.
Yeah. That was a great game. I agree with you. I watched a couple of interviews with both Patrick Mahomes and with Brock Purdy. And then there were a few other people that they interviewed as well, Christian McCaffrey, and they were all sharing their faith, the role that faith plays both in football and out of football.
Yeah.
And Christian McCaffrey said something to the effect of, he said, faith is at the center of my life. And if I win this game, it's great. If I win the Super Bowl, it's great. It's something wonderful to celebrate, but it's not the end of the world for me because I have my faith in the right place. And life has its ups and downs. It has its
Yeah.
difficulties and challenges, and you don't win everything. But with God, that you have a constant win with God's presence in your life.
Yeah.
And I thought it was just, some people, we all, including myself, can make an idol or make an ultimate thing out of things that are actually quite trivial. Pigskin, our work, our job, our vacation, whatever. And when we do that, when we make them these ultimate realities that we can't be happy without, we get disappointed frequently.
Yeah.
Because life isn't perfect and that you get everything you want when you want it and how you want it.
Right.
So if your focus is on God's presence in your life through the good and the bad, it really inoculates you against the sorrows of life where they are overwhelming. You
Yeah.
know, when something so trivial as a pigskin becomes the ultimate reality and determiner of your happiness. Something. Now, while that game's going on, just to be quite fair, while the game's going on, I'm up pacing, walking around, like, oh my God, what's going to happen here?
Yeah.
But when it's over, and you move
Yeah.
on.
I thought it was interesting that with the Taylor Swift factor, with her going with one of the players on the Chiefs, Jason Kelsey, uh, I thought it was interesting that when the first game, that apparently they did a shot of her in the suite, and she had a jersey on, an NFL jersey on for the Chiefs, and they sold $80 million worth of that jersey that week. So there are a lot of people looking for a lot of ways to connect. Uh, One more thing about sport that I thought was kind of cute. So the guy that is the head, Dana White, that's the head of UFC for full contact fighting. I saw a little talk he made, kind of a presser, but it was for a fight they had with a card with a bunch of guys on it, I guess. And so Dana was saying, look, it's okay if you want to go like Jesus, but this isn't the place or time for that. Leave your politics and your religion and everything out of this. If you want to talk about the fight, nobody wants to hear about Jesus at the end of your fight. And just talk about your fight and go on about your business, and let's leave that out. Then they went to clips of the fights and the next four fighters who'd won the fights. I first want to give glory to my Lord and Savior Jesus. Poor Dana White was over there just shaking his head. So it didn't work. So whether they thought people wanted to hear it or not, they were excited about it. I'll tell you, I want those who are watching live right now to get ready to do something in the next couple of weeks. We're going to gather names. And Jeff, I want to give a little tease for next week. Next week, we're going to have a special friend on. Vince Larson is our guest for next week. Tell us a little bit about Vince and why people would want to tune in.
Yeah, Vince has grown his Instagram following through his photography, and he has, I think, probably around 44, 45,000 followers that follow him for his photography. But recently, and I think what will be really interesting for us, he was sharing with us that he went through a season where I think it was almost a year and a half, a year to a year and a half, where he ceased, he quit taking pictures, quit doing photography, quit posting anything on Instagram. And there's a little story behind how something that was a wonderful, happy hobby for him became so stressful and anxiety filled. And he returned to it here, I think about a month ago, maybe 6 weeks ago, back to posting his pictures. But if you go to his Instagram account, he just does an incredible job of capturing pictures, especially for Instagram. And so next week we're going to talk a little bit about the role of happiness in our hobbies, and how to keep it in its right place, so that, because anything can become stressful and anxiety filled. And so he's going to talk a little bit about how he brought God into that hobby and allowed it to be more of a spiritual thing in his life. And it really goes along with the idea of what we talk about, making room for happiness.
Yeah.
So I'm really looking forward to that discussion next week. I think it'll be great.
Well, I love Vince, and he's a brilliant young man, and he's got. There are a lot of people who really are doing amazing things with the photography and the capabilities of just an iPhone. I mean, they're making entire movies on iPhones now, which is pretty amazing. And Vince is an expert in photography. He's going to bring you some neat things, and also tie it in with happiness. By the way, I think happiness might even involve having a
Yeah.
hobby. Period. Maybe some of us don't have a hobby and don't think we have time for that, but it does. Um, the week after that, Jeff, I've invited Kathy to be on with us and talk about prayer. And specifically, we want to talk about prodigals. We want to talk about friends or family, and this is what I wanted people to I wanted to give them a little ramp up time. I want you to think about a friend or family member that you feel like is not fully living out their God potential and their calling, that we need to commit to pray. And how do we pray for them? Do we just beat them with a Bible every time we see them, or do we just quietly pray and never let them know? Or what do we do when we're praying for someone we're concerned about in the family or someone we love a lot, and we want to see God connect better and bless their lives and them with God? So that'll be our subject in a couple of weeks. But I thought if it would be good, I want to call on your wisdom here for a minute, Jeff, spontaneously. And I was at a Valentine's dance for that Covenant had the other night, and a banquet. And it was a beautiful time. Enjoyed seeing so many friends. And one gentleman came up to me and he said, "Listen, I'm enjoying the book so much, and I'm about halfway through. But the part that moved me more than anything was the Moses part." And he said, "I always pictured Moses as this powerful leader, and then in your book, I picked up that what I should have already known, but I said to myself, stuttering, really? The guy stuttered, and he had to go ask Pharaoh to set the people free, and he was a stutterer." And this was interesting, Jeff. He said, the way I related to that is that I immigrated here from a foreign country, and English isn't my first language. And I have really struggled with insecurity about my accent. I don't want to have any accent at all, but I do. And jokingly, I said to him, "Well, listen, here's how you solve that. Just load up a bunch of your English-speaking American friends and take them with you to Eastern Europe in your world and see who's the smart one and who's the dumb one. If it makes you feel dumb,
Right.
an accent, and you really speak good English, then take them over there where they wouldn't speak a word of your language." See, it's not about feeling insecure about that, but let's talk about for a minute, as the meat of this happy talk today, about Moses and his insecurities about something seemingly as foolish as, "I can't do this because I stutter." And of course, I'm not saying that's trivial. That can be a huge issue. But what about us and our hang-ups that keep us from doing what we believe God has called us to do?
Oh, it's a great question. It's a great, man, it's even provoking me as I'm thinking about Moses. I'm thinking there was a stuttering problem for sure. There was failure. He had attempted to free Israel once before, 40 years earlier, and by killing an Egyptian slave master. And that had ended in absolute failure where he had to flee for his life. So it seems like he's entered into a season of life of resignation that, the best I can do, I can't lead people. The best I can do is lead sheep. And I'm happy and I'm content now.
Yeah.
I'm in my sunset years of life and I'm just going to do this. And so this disruption to him, I think not only does he legitimately have a stuttering problem, but he's looking for any excuse he can to not do and fulfill this task that he's being called to. Anything.
But I would have to say, Jeff, really, I think that's a legitimate problem. I mean, that don't you?
Yeah, for sure.
Was go speak to the Pharaoh, the most powerful man in the then known world, and he's like, I can't get a word out. I have a legitimate stuttering problem. So why did God ignore that and just call him to do something anyway? That, by the way, involves speaking.
Right.
It involves speaking, and the man couldn't speak without stuttering. And God gives him an assignment that necessitates him either stuttering his way through or figuring it out and getting over it.
I think what's interesting with this, just as we're talking about this, is the very thing that he has a problem with, he is engaged with in the face of God. He can't talk, but he is talking to God. He can't argue or make an argument case and articulate his point of view, but he is articulating his point of view to God. He is stuttering his way right through in the face of a burning bush, which you know, you can see the irony there of it. He can't do it. It's true, and yet he is doing it in
No,
the to the
no, I can't do
face
it
of God.
with Pharaoh, but I
Yeah,
can argue with you.
yeah, yeah. But you know, I think the point that you bring up with this individual that came to you at the dance is something that all of us struggle with. All of us have a struggle in our life with something that gets in between us and our ultimate fulfillment of purpose that God has called us to. And it's interesting that whether it's, you know, Gideon or David or Paul, and we can go down the list of people, Peter, James, we can go down the list of people, and all of them had something that prohibited them in their own minds from being the best candidate to fulfill that mission or that purpose. And yet God constantly chooses, well, I look at the nation of Israel. He says, of all the nations, you were the weakest, you were the smallest, you were the most insignificant, and yet I chose you. I didn't choose Egypt. I didn't choose Greece. I didn't choose, you know, countries in the Mesopotamia. I chose you, a small, enslaved people, because I knew that you would realize that it was my power, my strength, or as Paul will say, you know, when we are weak, then God is ultimately strong in life. So I
Hmm.
wonder, and I would love, since obviously this question was posed to you, I'd love to hear kind of what your response was um, to this individual that was asking you this. Like, what do you think is um, why it is that we're oftentimes called to tasks or to mission or to a purpose that our inabilities scream out in the face of that, like called to speak and yet we can't speak.
Well, if I'd had more time to speak to him about it, I would like to have found out more of his secret. I think, frankly, just knowing him a bit, it's hard work. But he's actually built a successful business. He and his wife are involved in ministering to married couples at Covenant. He has just gritted it out and pushed through and learned and educated himself and not given up and has become really an overcomer. That's all I can say, and really successful. But even at that, it was interesting that he related in that way to Moses and felt strengthened by. And look, I
Mm.
can be. I'm not alone in this. I can be happy knowing that even while I struggle and sometimes I'm embarrassed about my accent, I'm in the game, and I know God's favor is on me. I guess what I'm feeling is Jeff, and it's nice to see that my friend Pastor Tony Suarez joined us. Let me know if you're still on here, Tony, and if you'd be willing to share a word in this conversation. We might just bring you on. I'd like to catch up with you about something. This is live, folks, and we're seeing people across the country join us. And I love Tony, and I'd like to have a word with him if he's available. So I think what really spoke to me about it, Jeff, is that I don't know. Don't you think I could probably say and be right that every one of us has something, and that we could legitimately point to disqualify ourselves? So I guess what I'm intrigued with right now is God, who has to know that. He knows all about us. Why does he just call us anyway to do something that can be so challenging? And is he just ignoring that, or is he trying us, or is he promising, if you'll go for it, I'll give you the strength? What is that?
I don't know. I think part of it is whenever we do something in our own strength, we are susceptible to arrogance and pride. We are
Oh yeah.
we are susceptible to the very real temptation of thinking that it is all I did it, I accomplished it, and then we can disengage from God. Whereas when we, and in this story specifically, Moses is constantly from this point forward, and we make this point in the book, but he is constantly placing himself in a position of dependence on God throughout the entire next 40 years of his life.
Yeah.
Constantly. Whereas Aaron struggles from time to time because he is so articulate and he can speak so well, and he's so gifted, and he's so well loved by the people.
Yeah.
There are times when he absolutely misses it, and God gets angry with him. You know, he builds a golden calf, or he talks bad about Moses, or and he leads the people astray. So I think
Mm-hmm.
there is a certain amount of, when we lead through our weaknesses, we depend more on God than when we lead through our strengths. And
Mm-hmm.
we come to
Wow.
know that God is present with us because we can't do it on our own. And I think I shared with you, you know, when I was going through my
Mm-hmm.
divorce, I had this vision, for lack of a better word. It was a vision that I had, and it was me and this elongated table I was seated at, and the doors open up, and all of these people come in, missing arms, legs, this kind of hobbled in like the Walking Dead. They sit down at this table, and when they sit down, they all plug into each other. The guy without an arm sits next to a girl with an arm, without a leg, with a girl with a leg, and like a puzzle, they fit in around this table, and they start eating and laughing, and their brokenness, when they come together, makes them whole. It's like the mosaic, you know,
Mm-hmm.
all the broken pieces
Mm-hmm.
make a picture. And I'm sitting there in this, and I hear this voice speak to me and say, I am, you are going to be broken. You will go through a divorce, and it will break you. It will break you. But it's okay. This brokenness that you experience will give you an authority with broken people, that they will listen to you now. And this was the kind of the key phrase for me that I think relates here. The voice just said to me, your entire life you've depended on your education, your speaking ability, and your spiritual disciplines as your strengths. And I've worked with them and through them. But going forward, I will not be working with them and through them like I did before. I will work through your brokenness and your vulnerability and your weakness. And then I heard these words. It was, that is where you will find me. And I knew in my heart that as long as I would be vulnerable and be real with my weakness, I would be nearer to God's presence, or more aware of God's presence, than if I continually defaulted to my strengths. You know, it's not that God's not with them, but when I start talking about my failures, or my brokenness, or my weak, when I talk about that, the only thing I can look to for grace or for strength is God. I'm not looking
Yeah.
to myself in those
Mm-hmm.
moments. And so I think there may be something to that, as it relates to Moses.
Well, and the Apostle Paul, I was thinking of, said, "Out of my weakness I made
Mm,
strong." So I think it's not. Well, I guess you could turn that coin over, and out of my strengths I could be made weak.
yeah,
If I'm going to, if my braggadocio is on my strengths, I could be made weak by that. But out of my, by the way, Jeff, I want to really appreciate you. I know this is all still has to be fairly fresh for you, and as a dear friend, I want to appreciate you being vulnerable enough to talk about what you've been through. It's not something that you would have chosen nor even dreamed about a few years ago, but it happened. And you know, life happens to all of us, and life takes turns we didn't expect. And sometimes we don't feel like we're ready for it. But nothing surprises God. That's what I have to remind myself sometimes. A lot of things surprise
yeah,
me, but nothing surprises God. And I just appreciate the way that you have worked your way through this in grace and humility and brokenness. And I know that it's made you a better man. I think you would say that. And I just can't imagine how many people your story is going to help because you're willing to talk about it. You know, I said one time, Jeff, that when Jacob wrestled with God and God dislocated his hip joint so that he limped, uh, God did a miracle for Jacob, changed his name to Israel, named the whole nation of covenant after him. His 12 sons became the tribes and all of that, but apparently never fixed his limp. And
yeah,
so when I see someone that I'm getting to know, I, I'm always a little concerned when they don't have any limp and don't show if they do. because I don't know if I can trust that or not, because everybody has
Yeah,
something. I think the more that we share that and give God glory for it and work with it and let God strengthen us in spite of it, that's always inspiring to people. And I appreciate you for that.
thank you. Thank you.
I know sometimes you must almost catch yourself saying it when you're about to say it. Like, is this okay? Or is this real? Or is this a dream or a nightmare or what? Because it has to be, I mean, it's only been in the last 5 years and it has to be really fresh to you in some ways.
It is.
But
And I don't think, I was thinking about this today. I mean, there's not a day that goes by that I don't think about it. But I was thinking about it today, and it wasn't anything that I, you know, planned for or thought that would ever happen. And when it happens, it's like you look at it, and there are moments where, apart from God's presence, like apart from thinking about God's presence in my life, I don't like that I'm a person that went through a divorce, and I have that has besmirched my
yeah,
character, or is a part of my story. There's a part of me that there's that shame part of me that doesn't want that, and so I had kind of constantly get over it by going, that God loves me, and God's presence is there kind of holding me in that,
yeah,
and I also have to be, I also go run through the whole thing of, because I think we're so prone to creating a sense of honor for ourselves or goodness about ourselves based upon who is to blame. So there's a real temptation of
right.
wanting to blame someone in order to make me feel right and not feel so bad. And I think as I've, evolved in this journey, I've learned to go, okay, there's parts of me that are to blame. There's parts of me that are wrong. I can't always point my finger at the other person and say, well, they did. I have to go, there's a part of me that's flawed and has a fissure in it and a brokenness within it
Yeah,
that needs
yeah,
God, that I desperately, desperately need God. I am not so righteous that I am above the need of God. And so I think when I come back to that, then there's that sense of poor in spirit, that I'm impoverished in my spirit. I desperately need
yeah,
God to bring any kind of value
yeah.
to my spirit. Only God can bring that. And so you're absolutely right.
You know, Jeff, I think that, and we could talk about this another time, but there's even a healthy way to blame, because blame is something the courts deal with every day. Who was at fault here? And in our spiritual life, there has to be a healthy way to blame, even if, because you and I, in whatever we're struggling with, there's probably never a scenario where we're totally to blame or totally
Right.
without blame. But there has to be a healthy way, doesn't there, to accept what blame is yours, not take on blame that is not yours, even though it may be accounted to you. You can't take that in because it really isn't your fault. So I'm sure that you've walked through that too. And this is kind of off the script now, but maybe you would have a word of what you've learned in the heart of this, the fire of this struggle. What do you do with the blame? I know that the enemy, this is where I'm going with this. The enemy is called the accuser of the brethren. I know that he's always the accuser. So he's going to blame you and want you to carry the shame and guilt for what your part was and what your part wasn't. And you have to deal with that in a healthy way, don't you?
Yeah, I think there's almost like there are the stages of grief. There's like stages of blame, right? Certain emotions that you move through as you're processing through the blame, the guilt, and all the way through to freedom from that. And I think early on, there was a lot of anger on my part, for things I felt were injustices or wrongs that had been done. And so there was anger on my part. But it's interesting you use the word, you talk about Satan, you talk about the enemy coming in, and the Satan, that Greek word for accuser, the prosecuting attorney of my soul.
Yeah.
You know, the moment that you begin working through it, then there's all the accusations that come at you. Did you do absolutely everything that you could have done? Did you, were you the most beautiful picture of Christ in love? And so all these accusations come at you, and you start bearing that, and that weighs upon you. And I think, in terms of getting through that, I think being able to go, I have fault in this, and that's okay.
Yeah.
God's love does not come to me based upon my faultlessness. It comes to me based upon humility. And the moment that I am prideful and act like this person's to blame, or it happened because of this in my life or that in my life, or I didn't get the right this or that, the moment I do that, pride is what's at work in me, trying to hold me up. And really, it's sinking me, because I walk away from those moments. Every time I point a finger of blame, I walk away feeling worse. I don't feel better.
Yeah.
I've never felt better when I pointed my finger at someone else to try to distract someone from looking at me. But every time, without fail, that I've humbled myself and said, okay, I have some responsibility here. I have wrong and brokenness in my life, and I can't speak for that person, but I definitely can speak for the flaws in me. And they are there, and they are real. And I'm crying out to God to just come into my life. I need God. And that's all I'm responsible for me. I'm not responsible for that person. And so there's always room to grow. And the moment that I do that, every single time, I feel God's presence. Every time.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I think that's part of it. I don't know the full journey of it. It needs to be perfected in my life more. There's more room for growth. But I know the daily part of it for me is pausing and going, okay, here's where I'm broken, and that's okay. That's absolutely okay.
Yeah.
God never asked of me to be perfect in the sense of my character's perfect. I respond to everything perfectly. I have the perfect behaviors and the perfect attitude. All he asks of me is to walk humbly with God, to love mercy, and to do justly. That's it.
Yeah. Yep. And that's an assignment that we can do. We got to do what we can do. You can't change the past. We repent. That's one of the things, Jeff. That's one of the tenets that's unique to Christianity and to Christ, isn't it? Is repentance and do-overs. I don't know if you all have done this. Comparative religions is a great study. They even offer doctorates in comparative religion. There's no other religion in the world that offers forgiveness for sin and cleansing, and you walk on unscathed, and God takes your punishment for you. There's no other religion in the world that offers that. And that's the goodness of the God we serve, and Jesus, who was our sacrifice. Jeff, we have about 5 minutes here, and I want to mention a couple of really important things. You and I had a great visit this morning with our team in New York, and we've got a spin-off of the book. The book we're referring to, folks, is called Real Happy, Jesus' Surprising Secret to Genuine Joy. And thank you for buying it. You can go to Amazon and pick it up now. You can just look it up, Real Happy, or go to Mike Hayes, Real Happy, or Jeff Garner, Real Happy. And I want to brag on the people who are leaving reviews. Man, there are some of the greatest reviews. Some of the people writing reviews should be writing their own books. It's really good.
I know. I felt the same way.
They're thoughtful, and they're so encouraging. So if you've gotten the book, be sure you write a review to Amazon and let them know. And if you haven't gotten the book, please go there, get one for yourself and for a friend, and let's spread this joy around. We have I guess it's okay to call it a spin-off, Jeff, of the book, and the anointing that this is all carrying about being real happy. We are designing a 12-module live coaching course on happiness. And people are going to be able to sign up, and it'll be carried on live, small, manageable classes. You and I will be teaching that personally, and it starts in the spring a little later. So watch for announcements about that. But I was excited, Jeff, today to work on that and see how good and helpful that's really going to be for people. So very soon, friends, we'll be signing you up if you want to be a part of a 12-week coaching course on happiness based on the tenets of the book. And I know it's going to be life-changing for you. And it's also, just to let you in on a little secret, it's also going to be a part of the path to becoming certified as a happiness coach so that you can help spread this joy. So I've kind of thrown it out there. It's pretty aggressive, but our group in New York believes we can do it. And by the end of next year, by the end of 25, we want to have 100,000 certified happiness coaches all over the world that are helping spread the message that only through understanding the principles that Jesus shares is real happiness attainable, but it really is. I hope the folks today that woke up, especially San Francisco fans, I hope none of them were the people, Jeff, who paid reportedly more than $3 million a suite was going for. $3 million. And the average ticket in the bleachers was $8,700. So if your team lost and you paid $3 million for a suite, I don't know what your happiness meter looks like today. But here again, we try all kind of things, and some things make us real happy and some things do not. Can you say a word before we finish, Jeff, about the book and encourage people to get their own copy?
Yeah, I want to just jump on, kind of piggyback on what you said with the coaching that's coming up. It will have 12 modules in it, and it kind of, I mean, it really helps flesh out how to integrate those principles in your life. And the way that I think about this is whereas the book can give us the information and inform us, sometimes we're not exactly like, it makes us aware. It makes us aware of the possibilities and gives us an imagination for them. But we really need help with somebody guiding us into it in our own life. And so the coaching modules can do that for you. There'll be 12 modules. So I want to back that up. But and also just to say, with our team in New York, what's been really fun, or maybe fun's not the right word, but eye-opening for me is I didn't have an imagination for the possibilities. And then when they come on the team, they read the book and they're giving us their ideas, and like, you've got to do a coaching session. We of course met with Steve, the CEO of the company, and he said, I'm going to just be frank with you. I'm just going to be very real with you guys. This will work. And I've done this. Of course, he's done this over and over and over with big name people that are all over out there. And he's like, this will work. If you guys just trust me, we'll make it happen. And I think hearing someone like Steve say that, and he's not, blowing hot air, he's way too busy for that. It was just like, man, this is really exciting to have them on our team. That I would just say with the book, and just to echo something that you said, if you haven't yet done a review on Real Happy on Amazon, we have a goal, I think, to at least within the next couple of weeks to hit the 100 review marks. So if you'll help us get there, if you haven't done that, jump on, write a review. We'd really, really appreciate that. That kind of helps us get our message out to audiences beyond our own market. Yeah. And then for the book, just as I'm thinking through it, and every day there's something in it that hits me fresh and new. Today I was thinking about just, the whole idea of pure in heartedness, and how happiness really is connected to that, to having a pure heart. And I think what that means for us, for our listeners, I would just say is that happiness is as close as you are to your heart, and as in touch with your heart as you can get, and just allowing God to purify it. Yeah. It doesn't require a certain amount of money or a certain kind of car or any of those things that we tend to associate happiness with, but it's allowing our heart to just be purified by God's presence. And I think for me this morning, I was just saying over and over, and this is one of the advantages I think Christians have, is we get to go, my spirit isn't always right, but I want your spirit in me. Yeah. Christ, yeah. Bring your spirit in me and enhance everything that I was really meant and intended to be. And so that's the word I'd like to leave with people. It doesn't matter where you're at or what you're going through, Christ's presence is available. And just open yourself up to it. And there is a happiness that comes with that that is unlike anything the world can give or material can give, unlike anything. And it is so easily accessible
Yeah,
to us.
it is, Jeff. That's a good word to finish on. And thank you so much for your input today. It's always encouraging to me, and I know to so many people. I love your spirit and your heart. I love the principles really that you shared of what you've learned as you walk through a difficult time in your life. And for those who watch today, this is called Happy Talk Monday because it doesn't matter that the weekend's over and it either went good or bad today at work or whatever, traffic, but we're going to stay happy and nothing's going to steal that from us. And we're thankful that you've joined us. Be sure you pick up a copy of the book, Real Happy. We'll be on the same page, no pun intended. But we want you to go through it. It's going to be a joy. And by the way, Jeff was challenging us we want to get 100 positive reviews on Amazon. And I think we're just about at 70. We've been out for a couple of weeks, and I think we're just shy of 70 really great reviews. And I'd love it if you'd write one for us. God bless you. So good to be with you today. Jeff, on the West Coast, we thank you for being here today. I'm on the East Coast, and it's been a joy. And we'll see you guys next week, same time, same place for Happy Talk Monday. God bless you. Bye, Jeff. Bye.
Goodbye, Mike.
See you guys later. Bye-bye.